They walked away from a completed home, one that took 4.5 years to build, nearly every dollar they had, and more than 290 million combined views to document, and started the whole process over from scratch. That couple is Mackenzie and Spenser, the creators behind Life Uncontained, a channel that grew from 2 restaurant servers with no construction experience to one of the most watched sustainable living operations on YouTube. And if you've been following along, you already know the rumors that started circulating the moment they posted that bittersweet farewell video in 2023. By the time this video ends, you'll know exactly what's been confirmed, what's currently under construction, and why this second chapter is telling a fundamentally different story than the first one did. Most people who discover Life Uncontained assume the channel was built on some kind of grand plan, that Mackenzie and Spenser always knew what they were doing, that this was all intentional from day one. It was not. Before any of this existed, before the solar panels, the shipping containers, the 1.5 million subscribers, both of them were waiting tables at restaurants in Florida. That was the life. Stable, predictable, ordinary. Mackenzie and Spenser were in their 20s, living in a conventional house, working conventional jobs, and by their own admission spending years not knowing what to do with themselves. The dream of living differently existed somewhere in the back of their minds, but neither of them had a real picture of what it would look like, or whether people like them could actually do it. The turning point was a road trip to Alaska in 2016. Not a YouTube strategy, not a business decision, just a trip. Along the way, they stayed in a converted train car in Washington that had been turned into a solar-powered hotel, then an Earthship house in Taos, New Mexico, a building made from recycled tires and earth, running entirely off the sun. 2 stops, 2 nights, 2 structures built by regular people who decided to do something different with how they lived. Mackenzie and Spenser went home to Florida changed. The idea didn't immediately become action. Real estate markets were rising in Florida. Financial pressures were compounding, and the window between dreaming about a different life and actually building one was narrowing fast. They started saving with intention. They started researching. Spenser came up with the shipping container concept. Durable, affordable, modular, and available in large quantities from ports across the country. The plan began to take shape. On March 1, 2018, they sold the Florida house, sold the cars, quit the jobs, and moved to Texas, where Spenser's parents owned land outside of Houston. And if you think starting over with no savings buffer and no construction background sounds like a plan, you haven't heard the part about what they did when they got there. The first thing they built in Texas was not the house. It was a barn conversion. Before a single shipping container arrived, before any framing started, Mackenzie and Spenser transformed an existing barn on the property into a functional, solar-powered workshop. That was phase 1, not building the home, but building the infrastructure to build the home. A solar system, a power source, a working space. It was methodical in a way that surprised a lot of early viewers who assumed the couple were going to make the obvious beginner mistakes and fail fast. They didn't fail fast. What they did was slower, messier, and far more honest than most channels in the space. Every miscalculation got documented. Every setback became content. Spenser had some mechanical background. He'd worked on cars before, but neither of them had ever touched structural framing, container welding, roofing, electrical, or plumbing. They learned each skill as it became necessary, on camera, in real time. The container home they built used 2 40-foot shipping containers as the core structure. The finished result was approximately 875 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a big deck overlooking the pond on the property. The entire system runs on solar power, fed by the panel array Spenser built and configured himself. Rainwater collection handled the water supply. No grid connection, no mortgage, no monthly utility bill. It took 4.5 years. When Mackenzie announced the home was finished, she said they'd built it from the ground up. That line landed with the audience in a very specific way, because they had watched every single part of the ground and everything that went up from it. The comment sections lit up. The view counts on the completion videos reflected the size of the audience that had followed the full arc. But here's what the comments kept asking, almost from the moment the final tour posted. And here's the answer they never got, until now. When a channel like Life Uncontained finishes its central project, something predictable happens in the community. People start asking what's next. But with Mackenzie and Spenser, those questions took on a sharper edge than usual, because the community had spent 4.5 years watching a couple with no plan become a couple who executed one of the most detailed long-form build documentaries on the platform. Viewers who had followed since the Florida announcement understood, probably better than most casual subscribers, that these two don't sit still. The rumors started in a few directions. Some viewers speculated that the channel would wind down, that without a build to document, the core reason to upload was gone. Others assumed they'd sell the Texas property and start fresh somewhere new, because the audience had watched Spenser and Mackenzie make big pivots before and recognized the pattern. A third group of commenters fixated on a specific piece of information that had been mentioned in passing across multiple videos: the Colorado property. Mackenzie and Spenser had acquired a 6.5-acre mountain property in Ridgway, Colorado. The property came with a 2,000-square-foot cabin, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and it represented something more than just real estate. Ridgway sits in the San Juan Mountains in the southwestern corner of the state, the kind of landscape that looks completely different from the Pine and Pond, Texas land they'd been working for 5 years. The acquisition suggested a significant shift was either already in progress or coming. Then in September 2023, a video went up titled, "A Bittersweet Ending." The community responded the way communities respond when a chapter closes, with a mixture of grief and excitement, and the particular anxiety of not knowing what comes next. At this point in the story, most people walked away. What they did instead is the part nobody talks about. While the audience was still processing the Texas chapter ending, Mackenzie and Spenser were already moving, not emotionally, literally. The Colorado property wasn't a backup plan or a retirement dream or a passive real estate investment. It was the next stage of something they had been building towards since the moment the first container home was finished. And the rumor that had been circulating most persistently, that they were going to build again, from scratch, with a shipping container, turned out to be exactly correct. The confirmation came through the content itself. By 2025, the upload schedule had shifted to document a new build in progress. A time-lapse video released in May 2025 showed the complete transformation of raw land into what the channel described as a dream off-grid property, this time with a shipping container cabin at its center. Then in June 2025, a video went up called "We're Back: Overcoming Obstacles While Building Our Shipping Container Cabin." That title tells you almost everything you need to know about where the channel had gone and what it had come back to doing. The new build is a container cabin, not the primary family residence. That role appears to be filled by the Colorado property they already own. The cabin is a separate structure, an off-grid outbuilding that adheres to the same principles of solar power and self-sufficiency that defined the original Texas home. By July 2025, video titles were covering life on the land alongside the build, coyotes outside the door, the daily reality of working in a remote mountain environment, the kind of material that only works if the audience trusts the storytellers completely. By August 2025, they were framing additions onto the front of the container structure. This is not a sequel, it's a second act built on the credibility the first one created. And if you think the build is the whole story, stay with me, because this next part is why the whole story matters. Here is something the Life Uncontained audience largely knows, but that gets lost in coverage that focuses exclusively on the builds. Mackenzie and Spenser raised 2 daughters through the entire Texas chapter. Their older daughter Bo was part of the homestead life from early on, growing up on property without a conventional utility connection, surrounded by ongoing construction and the particular rhythms of off-grid living. Their younger daughter Cam was born in August 2021, with a nursery that had been built into the container home in advance. She came home to a house her parents had constructed themselves, powered by the sun, with water drawn from rain. That family dimension changes how you read the Life Uncontained story. This isn't 2 adults doing an extreme lifestyle experiment. It's a family that has been doing this together, in front of an audience, for the better part of a decade. The 2 daughters have grown up entirely within the frame of the channel's timeline. Bo was old enough to understand the Texas property being built. Cam, by the time the Colorado chapter was underway, was a toddler moving into preschool age. Most commentary on Life Uncontained treats the build as the story and the family as a detail. The truth is closer to the opposite. The build is the visible work. The family is the reason the work keeps happening. It's also worth naming the thing that the audience has almost never discussed publicly: the financial architecture underneath all of this. Mackenzie and Spenser's channel generates income through YouTube ad revenue, brand sponsorships, affiliate partnerships, Patreon memberships, and merchandise. The channel has accumulated over 292 million total views. Monthly earnings estimates from multiple tracking sources in 2026 place their YouTube income alone in the range of $12,000 to $17,000 per month. That range, across the years the channel has operated, suggests the original Texas property was not just a build project, it was funded by the audience watching it happen in real time. Most people who know this story stop here, But the real story starts right now. The question the community has been asking since the Texas chapter ended is the wrong question. Viewers kept asking, why would you start over? Why would two people who spent 4.5 years building something go back to the beginning of a build process they've already completed? The implicit assumption behind that question is that finishing means stopping, that completion is the destination. What Life Uncontained has demonstrated consistently across nearly 8 years of documented activity is that completion is just the moment when the next idea becomes possible. The shipping container cabin going up in 2025 isn't them doing the same thing again. The original Texas build was done by two people with zero construction knowledge who had to learn everything as they went, who were figuring out solar and rainwater systems for the first time, who made the mistakes that come with genuine inexperience and documented all of them. That was the amateur run. Not amateur in a diminishing sense, amateur in the original sense, done for love of the thing, not from prior expertise. The cabin being built in Colorado is different. Spenser now understands electrical. He knows container welding. He knows how to sequence a build, how to plan a solar array, how to frame a structure that will hold in mountain weather conditions that are categorically different from anything they dealt with in the Texas heat. Mackenzie has spent years on camera managing timelines, sourcing materials, communicating the build to an audience, and running the content and community operation that funds all of it. These are not the same two people who sold their cars in Florida and drove to a piece of Texas land they'd never developed. The second build is what happens when experience meets ambition without the weight of inexperience slowing it down. And here's what the comments kept asking. And here's the answer they never got. Until now. Every major piece of coverage on Life Uncontained focuses on the shipping container builds, the sustainability angle, the debt-free lifestyle, the solar power. All of that is real, all of it is documented, and all of it is genuinely what the channel is built around. But there's a layer to this story that almost nobody has named. Mackenzie and Spenser built their original container home on land owned by Spenser's parents. That detail is mentioned in passing in various places but rarely examined for what it actually meant to the project. Building on land you own outright, or in this case, land your family owns, removes one of the single largest financial barriers that stops most people from attempting anything like what this channel documents. The couple sold their Florida house and used those proceeds to fund the build. The Texas land itself wasn't a cost. That structural advantage, quiet and unglamorous as it is, gave the project a foundation that is almost impossible to recreate unless you have family land available. The Colorado chapter changes that calculation. The Ridgeway property, 6.5 acres in the San Juan Mountains, was a purchase, not inherited land, not family-owned acreage, an acquisition. That shift, from building on land you have access to building on land you bought, represents a financial maturity in the project that the audience has not fully registered. What it means in practical terms is that the Life Uncontained operation has moved from a bootstrap family experiment on land someone else owned to a full-spectrum sustainable property business where both the land and the structures on it are assets that Mackenzie and Spenser have built, acquired, and now actively develop. The cabin going up in 2025 is part of a property that they own outright, in a mountain location, being built with skills that took years and one complete prior structure to develop. That is a fundamentally different story than two Florida servers with no plan and a container. One phone call, one conversation, that's all it took to change the direction of everything. As of 2025 and into 2026, Life Uncontained is uploading actively. The channel crossed 1.5 million subscribers. Total view count has passed 292 million. The container cabin build in Colorado is documented across a string of 2025 videos that show the project at multiple stages: framing, electrical, front additions, and the day-to-day reality of building on a remote mountain property with a family alongside you. The channel's current description is as stripped down as it's ever been. Building our dreams, one day at a time. That line has a different weight now than it would have had in 2018, when it might have just been a tagline. In 2018, the dream was abstract. An idea formed during a road trip, a plan made by two people who had never built anything. In 2025, the dream is a completed solar-powered home in Texas, a 6.5-acre Colorado mountain property, an active build in progress, 2 daughters growing up off the grid, and an audience of 1.5 million people who have watched every single step. The rumors that circulated after the bittersweet Texas ending, that they were gone, that the channel was finished, that the move to Colorado meant retirement from the build process, have all been answered by the content itself. They're building again. They're documenting again. And the platform they built over 7 years of consistent uploads is still watching. What the channel is now is something the algorithm rewards and the audience craves. A long-form story told in real time by the same two people, with enough earned trust that the audience shows up for each new chapter without needing to be told why it matters. The question isn't whether Life Uncontained is coming back. The question is what the cabin becomes, and whether Mackenzie and Spenser eventually move towards something bigger than a single off-grid property in the mountains. The Life Uncontained story isn't really about shipping containers, or solar panels, or Colorado mountain land. It's about what happens when two ordinary people refuse to let the word finished mean the word done. Mackenzie and Spenser completed one of the most watched long-form build documentaries on YouTube and responded by starting another one, this time with skills they spent 4.5 years building, on land they own outright, in one of the most striking environments in the American West. The 2025 and 2026 uploads confirm what the community suspected. The second chapter is already well underway. The obstacles are already being documented, and the audience is still there. So here's the question for you. Mackenzie and Spenser already built one home from scratch, with no experience, documented the whole thing, and used the audience that showed up to fund the next phase. Now they're doing it again, this time with every advantage their first build gave them. Do you think the second build will surpass the first one? Or is there something irreplaceable about watching people figure it all out from zero? Let us know below.